Text Chapter 12 Don't Hurt Her. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. The drug lord had a sinister smile on his face. Do you still want to fight? Situningbing knew that he might not be able to escape death today, but he still stood up stubbornly, wiped the dark blood from the corner of his mouth with his arm, and then held his hand on the wall next to him. I will kill you even if I die. With a roar, Situningbing suddenly rushed towards the owl poison regardless of his injuries. At the same time, he saw the silk in his hand pulled away from his hand with a hiss and rushed towards the owl poison. This desperate move, the attack can be described as extremely fast. The drug lord didn't dare to be careless and quickly retreated, but the moment he retreated, Situningbing in front of him suddenly turned to attack Chihu over there. Chihu, who was standing there, never thought that she would rush towards him. He hurriedly retreated, but unfortunately it was too late. I saw the silk in Situningbing's hand suddenly wrapped around his neck, and then Chihu's eyes widened, and his face turned ashen. Then he saw Situningbing's hand suddenly pulling, the silk slipped on Chihu's neck, then Chihu's whole body began to sob violently, and a blood-red slit suddenly appeared on his neck. His head slipped from his neck and fell to the ground. Gulyalu's head rolled on the ground and his eyes were still open. With a look of disbelief on his face, but where is his head? Already dropped, died. Chihu's head was cut off alive by Situningbing all at once. Looking at the dead Chihu, Xiaodu's face was extremely ugly, and he suddenly rushed over. I want you to die. After Situningbing defeated Chihu with one move, he had no power to fight back, isn't that right? She had no time to dodge and was caught by Xiaodu on the shoulder. Then Xiaodu's other hand hit Situningbing like a ghost, and Situningbing spurted out another mouthful of black blood. She was lying on the ground, her mouth smeared with black blood, and where was her body? Even more shaky, what about the drug lord in front? But he slowly raised his hand, go to hell. After the sound came out, a hand suddenly lifted up. At this critical moment, when Situningbing was about to die tragically in the hands of the poisonous gangster, a figure suddenly rushed over. Don't hurt her. The moment the voice suddenly came from behind Xiaodu, Xiaodu suddenly turned around, but he did not expect that the guy running over was still holding a handful of lime in his hand. Then I saw the guy running over throwing lime towards the poisonous eyes. Odu was shocked and quickly covered his eyes with his hands, but the lime powder still got into his eyes, and a burning pain suddenly entered his eyes. The guy who ran over grabbed the owl's waist and rushed back. Xiaodu's whole body was knocked to the ground with a bang. He never expected that this bastard would suddenly appear at this juncture, and that lime would sneak up on him. Over there, Situningbing, who had closed his eyes and was preparing to die, opened his big watery eyes in surprise and looked at him. Who is he? Isn't it Li Tian who was scolded away by her? Unexpectedly, he came back to save her. Asshole, are you a fucking man for bullying a woman? Li Tian suppressed the drug lord with his body, raised his fist and hit the drug lord shamelessly on the head. Li Tian, who had been fighting since he was young, was quite tricky. He punched the owl poison in the eye. The owl poison, which was already stung by the lime, was suddenly hit in the eye by this fool. He screamed in pain. Voice, the furious Xiaodu suddenly raised his knees and slammed them into Li Tian's chest. Li Tian was knocked up and fell to the ground. This fall hit him hard. How could Li Tian, an ordinary person, be compared to such a frightened killer? But this gangster, who claimed to be a sinner, never expected that he would fall into the hands of the gangster Li Tian today. He was actually blinded by the most common fighting tricks. Using lime, his eyes were so painful that he couldn't open them. He stood up and screamed like crazy, and his left eye was bleeding from Li Tian's blow. Come out, bastard, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. Xiaodu said crazily. The two younger brothers beside him hurriedly helped the invisible owl poison. However, the drug lord thought that an enemy was approaching him, so he suddenly reached out and grabbed a man in a black suit who approached him, and immediately pinched the man's throat. The man didn't even make a sound, and his throat was crushed directly. Died. The remaining man in a suit was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he quickly wanted to run away, but he was able to run away. No, he was whipped in the face with a flying kick by the drug lord, and then the man wearing the hand of the viper ring suddenly grabbed the other person's heart, and the person was beaten to death. Looking at Xiaodu, who seemed to be crazy at the moment, Situ Ningbing suddenly endured his injured body and stood up, then threw himself towards the blind Xiaodu. When Xiaodu heard the strong wind coming from behind, he quickly turned around, but what he couldn't see now was Situ Ningbing's opponent. As soon as he turned around, he was hit by the deadly silk in Situ Ningbing's hand. It wrapped around his neck, then the cold murderous intent in Situ Ningbing's eyes appeared, and he pulled with his hand. With a pop, Xiaodu's body fell to the ground like a log, and a thin blood-red line around his neck moved his head and neck. Dead, the drug lord is also dead. Li Tian watched the poisonous man fall in front of him with his own eyes, and was frightened. He had only seen murder scenes on TV before, but when he saw a dead person with his own eyes for the first time, he was stunned. Blinking her eyes and looking at Situ Ningbing, she seemed to be unable to support herself anymore. Her eyesight went dark and her whole body fell to the ground. Li Tian was shocked and ran over quickly, helping Situ Ningbing up. Hey, are you okay? But what about Situ Ningbing? I couldn't hear her voice at all. She had already fainted. Li Tian stood up and looked at the corpses on the ground. He was deeply shocked for the first time since he had never seen such a bloody scene. Oh my God, what should I do? These people are dead, what should I do? He murmured, looking at these corpses. Li Tian quickly and cleverly moved these corpses into his small room one by one. He quickly moved the corpses into the room, and then Li Tian used tools to deal with the blood stains. He quickly hugged the fainted body of Situ Ningbing next to him and ran towards old Mrs. Chen's small drugstore. Text Chapter 13 Taking Drugs. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Now this woman Li Tian could see that if he didn't save her, he would really die soon, so he ran very fast. When he arrived at Mrs. Chen's drugstore, Mr. Chen saw Li Tian at a glance. Xiao Lizi, are you okay? Mrs. Chen went up and asked with concern. It turned out that he was worried that the troublemakers just now would find trouble for Xiao Lizi. After all, he was the one who told Li Tian where he lived. At this moment, he couldn't help but blink and found that Li Tian was holding an unconscious woman in his arms, and he was slightly startled. This woman. Old Mrs. Chen pointed at Situ Ningbing in Li Tian's arms and said, Mr. Chen, please save her quickly. She is seriously injured now, and she is also poisoned. Li Tian laid Situ Ningbing's delicate body down on a small bed inside. Although the old man Chen in front of him still didn't understand what was going on, he was still the first to save people. What happened to her? Is there poison in there? Here. Li Tian pointed and said. When he opened the woman's wound, he was shocked to see that her wound was purple-black and the surrounding area was swollen. After seeing the woman's injuries, Mr. Chen frowned tightly. The injury is so serious, he said as he hurried to get the medicine. He quickly brought the medicine box over to treat Situ Ningbing. Li Tian next to him looked at Situ Ningbing's tightly closed eyes. His head was in a mess. What the hell have you done? There are several corpses hidden in his small room now. If the police come to find them, he will be in trouble. The more he thought like this, the more irritable he became, but he still had to work hard to stay awake. No, these people were not killed by him at all, they were killed by her, this weird and mysterious woman. Li Tian thought, she is a killer. Li Tian suddenly remembered what she had said, and was shocked. No wonder she is so powerful and is willing to kill herself at every turn. It turns out that she really kills without blinking an eye. When Li Tian looked at Situ Ningbing again, he felt a strange feeling in his heart. After more than an hour of busy work, Mr. Chen finally finished his work. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, Hey, who are you, little plum? How come she was poisoned by snake venom? Snake venom? Li Tian couldn't help but wonder. Well, don't you know? Old Mrs. Chen looked at Li Tian and said. Li Tian quickly said, I know. By the way, why are those outsiders looking for you? Old Mrs. Chen asked. Li Tian smiled awkwardly, and when he heard the deeds of those outsiders, he murmured in his heart, because he knew better than anyone else that the bodies of those outsiders were now lying in his home. All he could say was, it's okay, they found the wrong person. Oh, that's it, those people are really fierce. Xiao Lizi, I'm not telling you, it's best not to provoke those unscrupulous people from other provinces. Old Mrs. Chen said in a serious tone. Li Tian nodded perfunctorily. His head was a mess. What should I do? There are several dead bodies in his room at the moment. It is okay to hide them for a day, but if they are hidden for a long time, they will definitely be leaked. Besides, Situ Ningbing didn't know whether the killer in front of him was dead or alive. Thinking of this, Li Tian's head was in a mess. Xiao Lizi, I can't cure this woman's injury. Mr. Chen suddenly looked at the woman's wound and said. I was so exhausted that I could only help her treat the wound. As for the poison in her body, I don't have any serum here. Li Tian suddenly became depressed. Then what should we do? Mr. Chen, you must save her. Mr. Chen looked at Li Tian. Xiao Lizi, tell me the truth, who is this woman to you? Li Tian was speechless for a moment. Yes, who is she to him? After thinking for a long time, Li Tian didn't know what to say. Xiao Lizi, is this your girlfriend? I think this woman is a good match for you, am I right? Mr. Chen suddenly said with narrowed eyes. My girlfriend? Li Tian suddenly became excited when he heard what Mr. Chen said. With an extremely embarrassed look on his face, he could only nod and smile. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, darling, she is a killer, but having said that, if such a murderous beauty wife is really willing to be my girlfriend, Li Tian, will accept her even if I die. You must be kinder to women. You see, this girl is poisoned now. Hey, you'd better suck the poison out of her body with your mouth. Otherwise, I'm afraid her life is really in danger. Chen, the old man said. Ah. Do you use your mouth to take drugs? Li Tian opened his mouth and said. What's wrong? Can you bear to watch such a beautiful little girlfriend die of poisoning? Li Tian suddenly became depressed. What should I do? Do you really have to use your mouth to take drugs? I. Li Tian said twice but didn't say anything. Hurry up, why are you ashamed that she is your girlfriend? I'll go out first. You can suck out the poison from her with your mouth. Remember to put a piece of white gauze on your mouth when taking drugs. Be careful and don't put the poison in your mouth. If it is sucked into your stomach, and it is sucked until red blood comes out, it will be fine. After Mr. Chen finished speaking, he slowly walked outside alone. The remaining Li Tianzi was dumbfounded, looking at the beauty lying on the bed. What should he do? Do you really have to suck it with your mouth? For such a top-notch beauty, if anyone doesn't want to kiss her skin, there are only two kinds of people, one is a eunuch, and the other is a she-male. So of course Li Tian wanted to touch the fragrant skin under Situ Ningbing's chest with his mouth, but he was a little scared in his heart. He was afraid that if he really did this, he would lose his life if he turned back. This woman was a killer who killed without blinking an eye. After thinking for a long time, Li Tian finally couldn't defeat his heart. Suck. He slowly lowered his head and looked at the woman's snow-white skin. His heart was pounding, but he still gently placed the gauze on Situ Ningbing's wound, then gently leaned in with his mouth and sucked. When he sucked out the first mouthful of blood, there was a sour feeling in his mouth. He spat out the black blood, then he started using his mouth to take drugs. Soon, a mouthful of black blood spit out from his mouth again, one after another, and finally Li Tian sucked up almost all the venom in Situ Ningbing's body. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve, quickly pulled up Situ Ningbing's clothes, then turned around and shouted, Mr. Chen. After Chen Lao heard Li Tian shouting in the room, he limped in. Have you finished smoking? Mr. Chen asked, blinking his eyes. A note to readers, thank you Xiao Chao, thank you all the book fans, please recommend me and save it. Text Chapter 14 I am a killer. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Li Tian nodded, well, red blood has appeared. Mr. Chen took a look at Situ Ningbing's wound, but found that the skin color of the surrounding poisoned areas had gradually returned to normal, and no longer had the purple-black color before. He smiled and said, that's good. Ah. As long as the poison is sucked out of her, she will be fine. I will get some medicine for her later. Mr. Chen said. Li Tian suddenly became happy when he heard what Mr. Chen said, thinking that this woman finally saved him. While Mr. Chen was talking there, he went to get medicine for Li Tian. When Mr. Chen limped in with the medicine, he suddenly found that the hut was empty. Where were the people? Gone. Where is Little Plum? It turned out that when Li Tian heard that the poison in Situ Ningbing's body had been basically rescued, he was no longer prepared to stay at Mr. Chen's place, because he knew in his heart that although Mr. Chen's small medicine shop was small, it was the only medicine shop in Liaocheng, so there were often many people coming and going. If Li Tian is carrying such a strange woman on his back, they will definitely doubt that little Liaocheng can hide anything. It was simply impossible, so Li Tian had no choice but to leave, carrying the unconscious Situ Ningbing on his back. Li Tian didn't know where to go. There are several dead bodies lying in your room. You can't stay with the dead bodies, right? But Li Tian looked around, and there was really no place. Liao City was surrounded by mountains, and apart from the mountains there were lush trees. After thinking for a while, Li Tian finally chose his own room. He carried Situ Ningbing behind him and returned to his small room again. As soon as I opened the small iron door, I smelled the pungent smell of blood. He pinched his nose, not daring to look at the cold body on the ground, and slowly placed Situ Ningbing on his back on the bed. While playing, he suddenly felt something was wrong, because he heard the gasping sound behind him. He turned his head suddenly and screamed in fright. It turns out that the killer woman is actually awake. Are you awake? Li Tian looked at Situ Ningbing in surprise and asked. Situ Ningbing said nothing, and her cold face looked at him without any emotion at all, her eyes motionless. Li Tian felt something was wrong and his expression was a little stiff. Hey, are you okay? Situ Ningbing remained silent. Are you stupid? Li Tian asked again. As soon as these words were spoken, Situ's cold voice was heard saying angrily, What did you say? Li Tian was so frightened that he quickly backed away and said, No, I didn't say anything. But he couldn't help but murmur in his heart, Why is this woman like this? Why did you save me? Situ Ningbing suddenly looked at Li Tian and said in a chilling voice. Li Tian scratched his head with his hand. Because I'm a good person. Situ Ningbing glared at him. Aren't you afraid that he would kill you then? She suddenly pointed at the corpse of the drug lord lying on the other side of the room. To be honest, I didn't think about it that much at the time. I just felt that these men were bullying a woman, and she is also a top-notch woman. Based on this, I should help you. Li Tian said with a smile. Huh, really? Situ Ning said coldly. Of course, I swear on this light bulb. Situ Ningbing raised her eyebrows and said, Then do you know who I am? Your name is Situ Ningbing, of course I know. What else do you know? Situ Ningbing suddenly said in a bad tone. Li Tian felt awkward listening to the voice. He glanced at Situ Ningbing and felt that this woman was giving him an irresistible pressure. He quickly said, I don't know. I don't know anything except your name. I'm a killer. A sentence suddenly came out of Situ Ningbing's mouth word for word. She didn't hide anything, but said it bluntly in front of Li Tian. Li Tian's face muscles were a little stiff, and he stood there motionless, looking at Situ Ningbing. In fact, of course Li Tian knows her identity, but he is not stupid. What is the profession of a killer? It must be a hidden profession. If someone knows his identity, he will definitely kill him. This is how he was filmed on TV, so Li Tian is a little scared. He is really afraid that this woman will turn her back and kill him. Looking at the dumbfounded Li Tian, Situ Ningbing suddenly curled up the corner of his mouth and smiled. That smile was so beautiful that Li Tian almost fainted. The two shallow dimples, coupled with the flawless face, were really beautiful to the extreme. Aren't you surprised that I am a killer? Situ Ningbing suddenly looked at Li Tian and said. Surprised. Li Tian said truthfully. Are you afraid that I will kill you? Situ Ningbing looked at him and said. Afraid? But I believe you won't kill me. At least I saved you. Li Tian Dao. Situ Ningbing slowly turned her pretty fair face, looking into the distance with her beautiful eyes. I didn't expect to meet you here, nor did I expect to be saved by you here. It's fate. Li Tian said with a smile. Situ Ningbing ignored Li Tian and continued to mutter to himself, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe I'm lucky. But you finally saved my life this time. But you broke my rules. Situ Ningbing's voice suddenly changed. Li Tian couldn't help but be stunned. Did I break your rules? Yes. You touched my body. And, you still used your mouth. Situ Ningbing is a girl after all. Although she is cold and charming, her beautiful and flawless face still blushed a little when she said such words. When he suddenly said this, an invisible killing intent suddenly appeared on Situ Ningbing's face. Li Tian only felt that the air around him seemed to be condensed, and he was stunned there. I had no choice but to save you. Li Tian Dao. You shouldn't have touched me even if you saved me. Situ Ningbing said angrily. Li Tian cursed in his heart, damn it, I knew for a long time something would happen to my good intentions, but this time it really came true. Text chapter 15. Please be my wife. You are listening at NavelFemaleLead. Then, what do you want? Li Tian was suddenly afraid. This killer woman in front of me can kill him with just a few moves. Is he really so unlucky? After working so hard to save her, she kills herself again. I once swore that if anyone dared to touch me, I would be the first to kill him. Situ Ningbing suddenly turned her cold eyes and said. Li Tian was immediately discouraged. Are you really going to kill me? Li Tian looked at Situ Ningbing and said. That's right. Because if I don't kill you, I will. Situ Ningbing hesitated and said nothing. Li Tian was stunned. What will happen? I will marry you. A sentence suddenly came out of Situ Ningbing's mouth. When he heard this, Li Tian didn't know whether it was because of excitement or fear. He was hesitant and speechless inside. I once swore that no one could touch me except my man, and whoever touched me would die. But now you have touched me, and, so I have to kill you. After saying that, Situ Ningbing really raised his hand, as if he really wanted to take action. Wait a minute. Li Tian yelled. Situ Ningbing raised her hands in the air and stared at her almond-shaped eyes. What? What did you say before you die? I will be your man, and you will be my wife. When these words were spoken, there seemed to be a burst of dynamite in the air, as if it was about to explode at any moment. When Li Tiandang said these words, he didn't even dare to raise his head and look at Situ Ningbing. He was afraid. To describe this moment is to say that a toad eats swan meat. It is not excessive at all and is extremely appropriate. One is a poor young man with nothing, and the other is a world-famous, 7 evils, killer, be a wife. Situ Ningbing suddenly laughed, laughing unscrupulously, as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. Li Tian suddenly felt a little blushing. Why are you laughing? I'm serious. I'm serious. As long as you are willing to marry me, I, Li Tian, swear that I will treat you well in this life. If the sky falls, I will support you. If the ground sinks, I will support you. If you encounter a violent storm, I will protect you. Situ Ningbing suddenly stopped laughing. Shall I marry you? Be your wife? Her voice suddenly became charming and charming. Coupled with her enchanting eyes, Li Tian almost thought that he was dreaming. Yeah. Li Tian nodded quickly, his neck almost breaking. Do you know how many people I have killed? Do you know what I do? Do you know what my family background is like? And do you know how dangerous I am now? The most important thing is, what are you doing to protect me? Situ Ningbing asked a series of questions, which made Li Tian suddenly depressed. Yes, who is she and what is her home like? Apart from her name being Situ Ningbing and her nickname, Ing, Li Tian didn't know anything about how he could protect others. If someone can crush me to death with just one move, why should I let someone be my wife? Li Tian suddenly felt ironic and his face was burning. Do you believe it? One day I will definitely be able to protect you, and I will become stronger than you. Li Tian suddenly gritted his teeth and said each word. Situ Ningbing looked at him and smiled lightly. Okay, then I will wait until the day you become stronger and you come to marry me. If one day comes, I will marry you and be your wife. A word, a promise. This promise may be just a joke to her, but she didn't expect that it would become a deep imprint in Li Tian's heart, and it would be imprinted in his heart forever. Good. You said this, I will definitely remember it, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. In this life, you, Situ Ningbing, are destined to be my wife, Li Tian, one day. Li Tian said with confidence. Situ Ningbing, on the other hand, walked away and stopped looking at him. For someone like her who is the most powerful person in the country and is also a female killer, will she really marry Li Tian as his wife one day? Or was she just making a ridiculous excuse not to kill her savior? But no matter what, Li Tian was not killed, and she agreed. What is going on in her mind? Li Tian didn't know and didn't dare to ask too much. We can't stay here any longer. Situ Ningbing said suddenly. Li Tian was slightly startled. Oh, yes. There are so many dead people hidden in this house. If the neighbors find out, I will be finished. Li Tian said depressedly. So you have to leave here. Situ Ningbing said suddenly. When he heard this sentence, Li Tian couldn't help being slightly startled. Leave here? Where to go? Li Tian asked a very stupid topic. Situ Ningbing, go find your friends or relatives. Anyway, the further away from here, the better. But I have no friends or relatives. I have been an unwanted child since I was a child. I grew up in an orphanage. After my father and mother gave birth to me, in addition to leaving this for me, nothing else is left. Li Tian said with a smile, but his smile had an indescribable bitterness to it. While laughing, he took out a jade plaque from his neck, half a jade plaque to be exact, because the other half was broken, and only half of the jade plaque was worn on Li Tian's own neck. After listening to Li Tian's words, Situ Ningbing's beautiful eyes moved and looked at Li Tian. You go to Kyoto. Situ Ningbing said suddenly. After he said it, Li Tian was slightly stunned. Kyoto. Text Chapter 16 The Truth. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Of course Li Tian knew where Kyoto was. It was an international first-tier city, extremely prosperous, and it was also an international hub and commercial center. Yes, I'll find one for you. Situ Ningbing said as he took out a jade ring from his arms and handed it to Li Tian in front of him. When Li Tian took the white and transparent jade ring in confusion, he couldn't help being slightly stunned. Why do you give me this? Li Tian asked in confusion. Go to Kyoto and find someone named Xiu Si. After you find him, he will take care of you. Situ Ningbing said slowly. Xiu Si. Li Tian was slightly startled. Yes, when you give him the jade wrench, he will know what to do. Situ Ningbing said. Li Tian couldn't help but scratch his head and thought for a long time, why does he want to take care of me? Why should I look for him? Who is he to you? You'd better not ask what you shouldn't ask. You'll know it yourself by then. Situ Ningbing glared at Li Tian. If you don't want to go to Kyoto, then stay here and wait to die, or be locked up in a cell for the rest of your life. Anyway, there are so many dead people in your house, and the police will come soon. And the people of 7 Evils know after their people die here, they will definitely send someone over, and when the time comes, don't blame me for not reminding you. After Situ Ningbing said this, Li Tian suddenly became depressed. What she said was absolutely correct. It seemed that she really had to leave Liao City quickly. There were 4 corpses hidden in her room. Although she said they were not killed by him, how could she make it clear then? If someone from the Public Security Bureau really wears this, will Li Tian be imprisoned for the rest of his life? Li Tian's egg suddenly broke when he suddenly thought of this. It seemed that he was really going to Kyoto. Okay, I'll go to Kyoto to find Xiu Si. Li Tian said slowly. Situ Ningbing nodded silently, but murmured, you saved my life, I can only help you so far. Your name is Situ Ningbing, right? Li Tian suddenly looked at her and asked. Situ Ningbing said calmly, what's wrong? It's nothing, hee, I just think your name is the same as yours, so beautiful. Li Tian said shamelessly. Snort. Do you believe it? Situ Ningbing, sooner or later you will be my wife, Li Tian. Someone said. The corners of Situ Ningbing's mouth revealed a slight arc. Maybe, but wait until you have the strength to marry me before you say this. Li Tian looked at her graceful figure and secretly swore in his heart that if I can't marry you in this life, I will be a pig. By the way, why do you want to be a killer? Li Tian when asked. Situ Ningbing snorted coldly, as if she was taboo about everything about her. Li Tian didn't think that others would answer him, and stayed aside just asking for trouble. Many years ago, there was a little girl who was very lucky. She was born into a very wealthy family. She was smart and cute since she was a child, so she was very popular with the whole family. Unfortunately, such a lucky life did not last long. When she was 6 years old, she was suddenly kidnapped by a stranger when she came back from kindergarten. Since then, she has been taken to a strange place. She didn't know where that place was, and she didn't know who the kidnappers were. Who is his person? She only knows that there is a closed island. There are many children like her on the island. Most of those children are just like her. They were kidnapped and just arrived. Sometimes, she was afraid, and she often hid in a corner and cried alone, but the strangers beat her to prevent her from crying, and they also starved her, so that one day another little girl, was captured like her. United States, told her that when she came here, her tears were no longer worth a penny, because here, there was no family affection, no sympathy, and no pity. There was only cruel training and inhuman torture. If she wanted to leave here, had to accept many tests, so from that day on, the 6-year-old girl began to receive cruel training until she was 13 years old. During this period, the little girl had only one friend, and that friend was the little girl, Xiao Mei. But suddenly one day, the group of people who trained them suddenly proposed a plan. That plan was to kill people, and to kill the people closest to them. So the little girl unfortunately ended up with her only friend, Xiao Meifen. The time for the decisive battle has come, and only one person can come out alive on the victory field. Although Xiao Mei and her have a very good relationship, there is no choice but only one person can live here, or both of them will die. So the desperate effort began. At the beginning, she always gave way to Xiao Mei, but after she was injured by Xiao Mei several times, she became angry, so she was cruel and struck hard. When the last move came, Xiao Mei dodged, did not evade, and was killed by her knife with a smile on her face. The little girl never dreamed that her friend did not dodge. She was stunned. When she was dying, Xiao Mei told her, "You have to live strong and get out of here. Since only one of the two outside is alive, then you will live." When I said this, she died. And what about the little girl? Finally, I found out that the reason why Xiao Mei hurt her on the court, just to make her mistakenly kill herself, because only in this way can she survive, and she survived. She walked out alone with blood all over her body. She cried for a long time that night, in front of her friend's body. From that night on, she seldom spoke, never cried again, and began cruel training. Finally, she succeeded. After being trained, she left that place and became a killer, a cold-blooded killer. She couldn't remember how many people she had killed. She only knew that the task assigned to her by her superiors would be followed by action. Finally one day, when she killed another mother and daughter, she saw her daughter standing in the way of her bleeding body. When her mother cried in front of her, her heart softened, so she let go. She was tired of it. She wanted to leave that kind of killer career, but the organization did not allow it. She wanted to go home, to the home she had left since she was a child, but when she went back, she found that no one in her family knew her. It turned out that her family had thought she was dead since she was 6 years old, so they slowly buried her memory. When she discovered all this, she didn't go back to that home, she just glanced at her mother and father through the window. She was gone, but she was hunted down by the organization because her last assassination mission failed. When Situ Ningbing said this, she paused and didn't say another word. And what about Li Tian? She was completely stunned. He knew who she was talking about without even thinking. He never thought that she would have such a legendary story. Li Tian, who touched his head, wanted to say something to comfort Situ Ningbing, but after thinking for a long time, he couldn't find any words. Don't worry, wife, I will be good to you in the future. Whoever dares to make you sad again, whoever dares to make you cry again, I will be the first to kill him. Someone held it in for a long time and finally said, however. Situ Ning gave him a cold look, which scared him so much that he almost sat down on the ground. Please touch, please collect, and please recommend. Text Chapter 18 Ridiculous Fortune Telling. You are listening at NavelFol.audio. Li Tian couldn't help but see the old man's face clearly. His face was covered with old wrinkles, recording the vicissitudes of time like a book. His hair was a bit messy, mixed with white hair, and his beard was mottled. He looked like a tramp, only a pair of eyes were shining, looking at Li Tian with open and surprised eyes. Li Tian also smiled slightly at the old man to say hello, then turned his face and looked out of the car. Young man, where are you? The old man opposite suddenly looked at Li Tianwen and asked. Kyoto. Li Tian turned his head and said calmly. The old man said, let's go to Kyoto. It seems that you, like me, have to stay up for 2 days and 2 nights. The old man said, shrinking his arms, taking out a cigarette from his pocket, and then put it in his mouth. Do you want to smoke? The old man suddenly took out the cigarette from his mouth again and handed it to Li Tian. Li Tian couldn't help but feel a little depressed and shook his head. The old man just smoked on his seat unscrupulously. What did you do in Kyoto? The old man continued to look at Li Tian and asked, Li Tiandao, look for someone. It's good to find someone. Kyoto, the ancient capital of the 6 dynasties, is full of talents. I wonder who you are looking for. The old man continued to ask. Li Tian smiled, find someone who doesn't know me. When the old man heard what Li Tian said, he didn't ask any more questions, smiled slightly, and started smoking. Where are you? Where are you? Li Tian felt bored and looked at the old man and chatted. Me, I'm going to Kyoto too, but it's just the opposite of you. Someone has to come to me. The old man said with a smile. Really? Very good. Li Tian couldn't help but look at the old man in front of him carefully again. The old man was wearing a coarse cloth and a pair of cloth shoes at his feet, but he was carrying a small cloth bag, like a monk's cloth bag. What do you always do? Li Tian asked, looking up at the old man. The old man laughed, took a puff of cigarette and said, wandering in all directions, stopping in all directions, telling fortunes for people who are idle and idle. When Li Tian heard this, he suddenly realized, it turned out to be a fortune teller. Of course, Li Tian knew a lot about this kind of charlatan. There were 2 old men in Liaocheng who told people's fortunes all day long. They calculated their fortunes all day long. In the end, they had themselves counted to death and were hit by a car. At this moment, seeing this old man claiming to be a fortune teller, Li Tian said boredly, then can you always tell me your fortune? That the old man glanced at Li Tian with squinted eyes. There are 3 types of people in my life who don't care about fate. First, villains, second, evil people, and third, women. Li Tian smiled, I happen to be neither of the 3 types of people. Why don't you just help me take a look? Tell me your fortune and see what will happen to me after I go to Kyoto. Haha. Li Tian, who was bored on the train anyway, happened to chat with the old man to relieve his boredom. He never believed in fate, so just for fun and entertainment. In fact, the old man had already seen what Li Tian meant. He didn't know whether it was because he was free or for other reasons, so he said, okay, stretch out your left hand and let me take a look. Li Tian decisively stretched out his left hand. Why do you all like to read palms when telling fortunes? Can't you tell by looking at your appearance? Li Tian joked. The old man smiled slightly. The hand embodies the Tao of Liang Yi and the 3 talents, and includes the secrets of Tai Chi and the 5 elements. Therefore, it is big, and the world are all in one palm. It is small, and the 5 internal organs are equal, so look at the hand. While the old man was speaking words that Li Tian couldn't understand at all, he stretched out a skinny hand and slowly held Li Tian's palm, looking at it with a frown. Originally, he just glanced at Li Tian's palm casually, but after the old man took a look, his eyes lit up for a moment, and the hand holding Li Tian was clenched for a moment, and he frowned carefully. Watching, Li Tian was slightly startled. "Have you always seen it?" That the old man frowned, took a deep look at Li Tian, and then threw the cigarette butt in his hand on the ground. He couldn't help but murmured, "Why does his palm only have sky and earth patterns, but no human patterns?" That it turns out that most of the palms of human hands have 3 lines, commonly known as sky lines, earth lines, and human lines. In addition to the 3 main lines, there are many branches, which are called hand lines, but if you look closely at Li Tian's palm, you can see that the lines on his hands are extremely weird. There are only 2 vertical lines of the sky and the ground, and no human lines at all. Li Tian looked at the old man muttering in his mouth and couldn't help but frown and asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with my palmistry?" That the old man did not speak, and remained silent for 2 minutes before slowly letting go of Li Tian's hand, and said with a smile, "I have read countless people's palms in my life, but this is the first time I have seen such weird palms as my little brother's." Hearing what the old man said, Li Tian immediately knew that the old man who read palmistry must be cheating again. He smiled and said, "So, I'm no longer an ordinary person." "Well, definitely not an ordinary person. There is heaven and earth in your hands, and misfortunes and blessings are in your destiny. You have the sky pattern and the earth pattern in your hand, but the only thing missing is the human pattern." It's strange," the old man said there. "Then what does this mean?" Li Tian continued to ask with a smile. "Have you met some people you shouldn't have met recently? And have you made an agreement with them?" The old man suddenly looked at Li Tianwen with a frown. Li Tian was stunned and wondered what the old man meant. Could it be that he was Sitiningbing? After thinking about it carefully, he found that what the old man said was somewhat similar, but Li Tian still shook his head and said, "No." That the old man laughed without comment. "Old man, why are you laughing?" Li Tian asked. The old man turned his head silently, looked at Li Tian and said, "Things like life are actually in your own hands. How you do it and how you go about it depends on you. But I can tell you responsibly that your fate has been destined by God. God is the fate of the devil. This fate is vicious and cruel. If you are in troubled times, you will definitely become a hero. No matter what you do in the future, young man, remember what I said to Feng Qingzi, the great road is invisible, the destiny is extraordinary. If you are a great person, you must be benevolent and righteous. Remember not to go astray, otherwise." The old man did not take it seriously. Finished speaking, Feng Qingzi. The name of the first metaphysics master in Kunlun seems to be Feng Qingzi. It's a pity that Li Tian in front of him didn't know this old man named Feng Qingzi at all. When he heard what the old man said, Li Tian felt that the old man was talking nonsense. Isn't this the same trick used by fortune tellers? "Old man, do you think I believe it or not?" Li Tian suddenly looked at the old man with a smile and asked. The old man smiled slightly and narrowed his eyes. "Whether you believe it or not, it is destined by God." "Ha, but young man, I remember you, and I believe we will meet again in the future." As he spoke, the old man began to close his eyes slightly, lay down on the table and fell asleep snoring. After such a boring conversation, Li Tian was still thinking about something, but he didn't listen to a word of what the old man said. It's just nonsense that the evil spirits are ordered by the devil, or that they have gone astray. Text Chapter 19. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. But he didn't know that his life was exactly in line with the old man's words. After the train traveled for about a few hours, it finally arrived at another platform. As the announcer in the car announced the location, the old fortune teller stretched and woke up. Then he stood up, looked at Li Tian and smiled. "It's time for me to get off the car. Goodbye." "Hey, aren't you going to Kyoto?" Li Tian asked, looking at the old fortune teller in confusion. The old man didn't look back, walked towards the train door with vigorous steps, and said, "There's no need to go." His distant and ethereal voice reached Li Tian's ears, and Li Tian couldn't help but wonder, this old fortune teller is really a weirdo. He turned his head and continued to sit in his seat, but when he turned his eyes, he suddenly found that a torn book had fallen on the seat where the old fortune teller had just been sitting. The tattered book looked like an antique, and the cover seemed to be made of some kind of animal skin, and it seemed to have a yellowish color due to its age. When Li Tian saw that the fortune teller just dropped a broken book, he quickly picked it up, and then ran towards the car door, ready to return it to the old man. Unfortunately, when he ran to the car door, the old man's figure had already disappeared. "Your mother, running so fast," Li Tian said secretly there. "Forget it, a broken book isn't worth much, just throw it away if you lose it." Li Tian sat back again and casually threw the broken book on the table beside him, but when he threw the antique-like book on the table, the broken book seemed to have some attraction, and Li Tian couldn't help but have the urge to take a closer look at it, so Li Tian really touched the book and took a closer look. The cover is made of some kind of animal skin, but the corners have been worn out, and there is a faded seal character engraved on the cover. Because it is too blurry, Li Tian cannot tell what the character is. What? Li Tian, who was holding this antique-like book in his hand, slowly opened it. As soon as he opened it, a tangy smell of dust came out from the book. It was as if this book had not been opened for many years. Li Tian covered his nose and couldn't help but cursed. What kind of crappy book is this? Enduring the unpleasant smell, he slowly opened the book, and he was stunned immediately. What kind of book is this? Why are there tadpole texts in it? Looking carefully at the book in front of him, the graphics and characters on it were extremely weird, like ancient oracle bone inscriptions, or tadpole inscriptions, symbol by symbol, which made Li Tian suddenly depressed. After flipping through a few pages, they all contained this kind of weird text. Unfortunately, Li Tian couldn't understand it, so he glanced at it and left the old book on the table. He couldn't help but mutter, "What a crappy book." The antique-like book was placed in front of Li Tian, and what about him? "Then lie down on the table and rest." Li Tian Hun, who was lying on the table, felt sleepy, but just as he suddenly wanted to sleep, incredible tadpole words suddenly appeared in his mind. Yes, they were indeed tadpole words, and it was the tadpole text in the broken book that Li Tian saw just now. All those tadpoles seemed to have entered his mind, and they were still swimming. Where were they swimming? It actually swam towards Li Tian's acupuncture points all over his body. Acupuncture points on the human body can be divided into 3 categories. 1. Meridian points. Also known as the 14 meridian points. The acupoints distributed on the 12 meridians and the Ren and Du meridians are the main part of the acupoints in the whole body. 2. Strange points. Also known as extrameridian odd points. Any acupoint that has a certain acupoint name, a clear location and therapeutic effect, but has not yet been classified into the 14 meridian system, is called an odd acupoint. 3. Ashi point, also known as tender point, is an important acupoint in the human nerve center. And what about the tadpoles now? Then one by one they collided with the major meridian acupoints in Li Tian's body. Although Li Tian was lying on the table exhausted, when the tadpole suddenly hit his acupuncture point, a slight heat suddenly rose up from his dantian, and there seemed to be some gas about to burst out from his abdomen. And Li Tian suddenly felt 100 times more energetic and comfortable. Isn't this? After being shocked, Li Tian quickly sat up, completely stunned. He touched his body, looking like a lunatic, stroking here and there, still muttering in his heart, "What is going on? How could that tadpole just enter my mind and get into my body?" But when those tadpoles were swimming behind his body, he felt a sense of comfort that he had never experienced before, and his whole body was filled with unprecedented strength. Li Tian felt more and more strange when he thought about this. Having lived for 20 years, he never believed that good luck would come to him, let alone that God would favor him specially. He had been alone since he was a child, and he was used to it. But what happened today really surprised him. What happened to those tadpoles? Why did my body seem to have changed in an instant? He knew that the location of the tadpole just now in his body was where the air points of the human body were located. The so-called air points were originally where the body's power gathered. Under the abdomen, the tadpole's wandering had already touched his body. There were air pockets in his body, so Li Tian Kai felt that his whole body was suddenly filled with energy. Li Tian couldn't help but look at the broken book in front of him, wondering in his heart in surprise, darling, isn't it your fault? Thinking of this, Li Tian couldn't help but pick up the broken book he had just thrown away again. He took the yellowed book full of stench again and studied it carefully. The cover of the book was torn, and there was an ancient seal character engraved on it. Li Tian racked his brains and couldn't think of it. What exactly is a word? Opening the tadpole book again, Li Tian suddenly realized that this book was definitely an antique among antiques. He had not looked at it carefully just now, but after reading it for a while, he realized that the paper in the book was actually from ancient times. Siki paper. Although Li Tian didn't recognize this Siki paper, he could still tell from the traces of time and the rough lines on it that it was paper from a long time ago. This kind of Siki paper was only invented during the Eastern Han Dynasty. Although Siki paper is rough, it is wear-resistant. Because the paper is soaked in a special liquid, it lasts for a long time. It is not like other papers that break when rubbed, but because it was too rough and too heavy, so it quickly fell out of popularity, but Li Tian didn't know that what he was holding was an ancient antique. If he took out the money to sell it, he really didn't know how much it could be sold. But what about Li Tian? All he could see now was that the old book was thick and the paper looked like an antique. Opening the book, those weird tadpole characters were still vivid in his mind. Li Tian looked at them with interest. As he looked, those small tadpole characters seemed to suddenly move. Facing this weird scene, Li Tian was completely stunned. I thought to myself, could it be that I am dazzled? But after he rubbed his eyes, he found that the words did seem to be moving. Text Chapter 20. The tiger emerges from the mountain. You are listening at NavelFold.audio. After flipping through more than a dozen pages, Li Tian was shocked to find that this tadpole textbook was divided into 3 major chapters, each of which lasted from 10 to 20 pages. The first chapter had a total of more than a dozen tadpole text chapters. And the second largest article is completely different from the first one, and the tadpole text on it is very sparse, and it seems like a painting, one picture after another, and the third largest article is the most. It is long and occupies the next dozens of pages, but surprisingly, except for the incomprehensible hieroglyphic-like pattern at the beginning of the third chapter, the next few dozen pages are all blank without a single word. This made Li Tian wonder, what on earth is this book? Why is it so strange? Except for the first tadpole article, Li Tian had no reaction at all when he read the second tadpole article, and of course the third article was the same. It's as if this book is some kind of exercise that requires rapid progression. When Li Tian read the first article, those densely packed tadpole words would be like small fish swimming in his body, and then hit the acupuncture points all over his body, and then his body would be strangely full of energy. That feeling was something Li Tian had never felt before, as if his whole body was full of power, so much so that this guy was fascinated by it, completely immersed in that weird broken book. On the upper slope of the plateau, I saw a figure standing on the hillside, looking at the roaring train in the distance, a pair of shining eyes looking at it unblinkingly. Who is he? It turned out to be the strange old man who had a crush on Li Tian on the train and even lost a book. How come he is here? No one knows, and no one has the answer. His eyes were far-reaching and worried, looking at the long-disappeared figure of the train, and murmuring in his mouth, "The Book of Heaven, which I have treasured for a long time, is now in your hands. Is it a blessing? It's your fault." After murmuring those weird words, the old man stared at the boundless sky and continued, "Now that the magic star has emerged, it seems that the world is going to be in trouble again." The sound was distant and misty, and followed by a cold wind blowing from the sky into the distance. Magic star. The most evil and weird star among the 108 stars in Tiangang. According to Xianmen legend, the demon star is born every few hundred years. Every time it is born, it will shock the world and make ghosts and gods weep. It is said that the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, descended to earth from the demon star. Of course, no one can verify whether these legends are true or false, but for Xianmen, these have enough evidence. Who is the old man in front of me? Of course it is Kunlun's master who lives in seclusion in the mountains, the Xianmen master Feng Qingzi. It turns out that this old man was invited by the National Museum in Kyoto to visit the Tian Shu Dan scroll. It is said that the Tian Shu Dan scroll is an ancient sacred object. The National Museum and even the whole world are looking for this Tian Shu Dan scroll. Some people say there are peerless secrets hidden in the Tian Shu Dan scroll. Some people say that the Tian Shu Dan scroll is the underground royal tomb of a certain dynasty. Others say that the Tian Shu Dan scroll is actually a treasure-hunting secret book, and so on. Legend, this time Feng Qingzi suddenly stopped leaving, and various scholars from the Kyoto National Museum would not know how to discuss this matter, but these are no longer important. What is important is that the Tian Shu Dan scroll has fallen into someone's hands. Why did Feng Qingzi leave to Li Tian the Tian Shu Dan scroll that Xianmen had treasured for hundreds of years? Is it fate? Or evil? Maybe we won't know the answer until later. It is said that Li Tian was obsessed with that broken book on the train and read it with gusto. It took him more than 20 hours to arrive in Kyoto, but he still had enough time to read that shabby book. Who would have known that this guy would become more and more addicted as he read, especially when he was reading the first chapter of that shabby book. Those little tadpole words suddenly flowed through his 8 meridians, running all over his body. As those little tadpole words flowed up and down his body, he could feel a slight energy in his abdomen. He had never felt that energy before. Although the energy was very small now, Li Tian could already felt that his whole body was full of strength. If it weren't for being on the train, this guy would actually return to Liaocheng and have a good fight with the stupid guy from before to see who could beat whom. Along the way, this guy just read the broken book for more than 10 hours. To be honest, Li Tian couldn't read the book, and he didn't recognize the word tadpole on it. He didn't recognize any of them. He just felt comfortable when he saw the tadpoles suddenly swimming around his body. Finally, after watching it for more than 10 hours, Li Tian fell into a chaotic sleep. While sleeping, he dreamed of his unmarried wife, the killer Situ Ningbing. More than 20 hours passed very quickly on the train, and soon the conductor on the train began to speak on the microphone. Dear passengers and friends, we have arrived at Kyoto Station. Please pick up your belongings and get off safely. As the sound sounded, Li Tian woke up from his sleep. Arrive? Li Tian quickly wiped his face and looked out through the window at the tall skyscrapers and ferocious buildings. Darling, it is indeed a big city. With excitement, Li Tian hurriedly got off the train. The train station in Kyoto City is huge and crowded with people. There are rich people wearing suits and carrying leather bags, and there are also poor people who come to Kyoto to work with packages on their backs. And what about Li Tian? As soon as this guy arrived at the exit of the train station, his eyes immediately fell on the girls passing by, charming short skirt and sexy figure. Whenever he passes by Li Tian, this guy will take a look twice. He couldn't help but murmured, big cities are fucking different. It's really good. Even the women are hundreds of times more beautiful than the women in Liaocheng. So Li Tian, a big animal who came out of the small county town, entered Kyoto City in a chaotic manner. This prosperous city full of desires. Please collect, recommend, touch, reward, ask for everything. Do you young people dare? Dare.